Our controls, the brakes, the clutch, the throttle, that's our direct interface point to our motorcycles. And it's a really big deal. If we go tweaking around with those things, it changes the way the machine operates with respect to what we want it to do. However, if we just leave them and we never look at them ever, or never do any kind of maintenance with them, they'll end up degrading. And the cables that end up operating, all the controls and mechanical elements of that start to degrade as well. So today we're going to take a look at control cable lubrication. So the cable lube tool that we do need for this is just this small little guy here, and you can find this on Amazon for about $30 or so Canadian. And I'll put a link in the description there too, so that you guys can take a look at that and pick one up if you don't already have one. But the idea with this is that it allows you to take that control cable and move the metal part of it and stretch it out up to the top. Then you can take the actual top part of the cable housing itself, like the black part, and you can stick it in the larger hole in the bottom. You clamp both of the ends down and you create a seal with the rubber. Then there's a hole at the top here, which you can use to apply your lubricant or your cleaning solution. Now, I do this in 2 stages. I use WD-40 to clean the cable. It's really not suited for lubrication. It means water displacement. A buddy of mine told me that the other day when we were at work. And I used to use it for, lubricating some things around the house, but now I kind of use it as a cleaning solution because it allows me to lift up a lot of the dust particulate that's inside things and move it around. And once you get the cable set up into this cable lube tool, you can kind of massage it inside of the cable housing a bit to move that around. Now, what that also does is it provides a nice slick layer inside the cable itself to allow a cable lubricant. Now, I'll put a link to this as well. This is just something I picked up. It's a general Teflon-based multi-purpose lubricant. But what you do is you spray that in afterward, and then you'll notice that you get a more even displaced lubricant down through your control cable overall. And I find that helps a lot. I've done that on bicycles and their control cabling for the brakes, and I find it works really, really well. So yeah, 2 stages, clean and lube. So you don't have to do control cable lubrication and cleaning very often. I mean, it varies, I guess, depending on where you are. So for myself, I run into a lot of sand and a lot of dust, so I find it helps a lot to do it every year. So in the off season, I'm doing this. But if you're in a dusty area, like in New Brunswick, there's some really, really dusty areas up around the central part of the province, like in Gagetown. I can attest for the amount of dust that comes out of that place. So you might want to do it a little bit more. Or if you notice a difference, or you notice something with the controls as well. If you notice that the throttle is a little bit crusty, if the clutch cable is like, a little bit rusty or squeaking, you can take those cables up. You can put on the cable lube tool and you can do a clean and lubrication to solve that for you. Anyway, let's get ourselves set up at the bike and get this started. So specifically what we're interested in doing here is going to be working with the throttle cables and the clutch. And there's 3 cables overall that we need to worry about. There's 2 for the throttle. They have their own housing that's covered by this little rubber shroud. So we'll need to remove that, open up that housing. For the clutch, it's a little bit simpler. We just have the clutch connected there, so we just need to loosen it here and then loosen it down by the engine side, and that'll give us enough slack to remove that cable so we can get the cable lube tool in. So to start out with, what we're going to need to do is clear some of the area here. This is probably one of the best reasons to buy double take mirrors and these little ram mounts, because normally with the other mirrors it's just really difficult to take off. However, with these guys, they're just, well, as easy as this, I guess. Set these guys aside for a little bit. Next thing we'll want to do is we'll want to get some tools and pull these bark busters away, just because it's going to make things a little bit easier. This one you can leave on, but this one you can take off. If you are taking off the hand guards of the original OEM, the way to do that is just to get at this bolt here. Loctite. Next thing we want to do is we want to loosen this cable off. I've seen it been done where you can loosen off just here and pull the cable out, but likely what we'll end up having to do is we'll end up having to loosen it there and also in this area where it connects to the engine case and into the clutch system. So we'll loosen that one off first, and we'll knock this back here. So this has been fully loosened up top here. So I'm not pulling it back this way, I'm moving it in this way. I'm trying to give slack into the cable so it'll move up to the front. And what I want to do when I finish is I want to align some of these notches. Do you see this notch right here? And then there's one right there. So you align them like this, and then you can see that's starting to pull, but it's not quite coming, right? When you pull this out, it should be able to slide out through all that. Now, so we need some more slack, so we're going to go down to the engine section and we're going to get it right from there. Right, so by loosening this bolt here, just by giving it a twist here, what I'm doing is I'm creating a little bit of space in between this securing mount and this cable holding bolt. So when these two bolts come together, they secure this cable in place so that the clutch lever here can pull in to allow the clutch to do its thing. But that gives me some space to move this whole cable now. See that? See that movement there? That allows me to be able to pull here. Next, we'll install the cable lube system here. Loosen it all off. So you can see that I have some of the cable housing inside the cable lube tool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clamp those down. What you're looking to do here is you're looking to make a nice seal with this rubber. You see that, how it covers over? That reduces the mess a little bit. If you're ever unsure about doing this and you want to get some practice first, you know, do it on a bicycle because it's the same kind of premise, right? Another thing you can do is you can move the lubricant inside by just kind of moving this back and forth. And then you can reapply more lubricant as needed. And now if you look down here, you can see some of the lubricant starting to come out the other side. So we're good to go. Move on to reassembling all of this, and we'll move on to the throttle cables. When resetting the clutch lever, what you want to do is you want to move this back. So you'll be screwing this out to create more tension on the lever, and then you'll lock it in place once you feel like you have it in place with this final bolt. The ideal here is to have a certain amount of play here. You don't want to have it all the way back. That way then you're never clutching onto anything. And you don't want to have it already engaged, so you want to make sure it's loose. Right there, that's feeling pretty good for me, but I'm going to go check it out here real quick. So the idea is when your clutch is fully out, you don't want it engaged. So you check down here and make sure that this is fully all the way back, which it is. And you want to make sure that you have about between 8 to 12 millimeters of play on this. So we can bring up the handy dandy measuring tool here really quick. So looking at the center of the ball, yeah, I've got about 10 to 11 there. It's pretty good. Definitely getting some snow tonight, that's for sure. Probably a good day to go hiking tomorrow, I'd say. Get snowshoes on. Anyway, back to the task at hand, I suppose. So the next part we want to do is the throttle. So first thing we'll do is we will loosen these off. Create a little bit space. Again, we want to move these cables up onto the housing here. We want to move them up so we have some slack. By the time you've done that, you can already feel them moving around in there. Next part is we'll want to take this rubber section off. Little housing cover here, you can just peel this back. Don't worry about getting it over the control cable. Controls, it's fine. The idea is you want this freed up. There we go, access granted. Next, we'll want to remove those two screws. So now you can see how removing that housing gives us access to the throttle, also gives us access to movement of the throttle as well, so it's kind of hanging there. Don't panic too much about that. I mean, you can always put things back the way they were, but rolling it off and rolling it on will allow you to have enough access for this. And once you're done here, you're pretty much good to go as far as putting the cable lube tool on. Too easy. So this is where it gets a little bit messy. Now that I've got the cable lube tool on here, I still have this plastic part that exposes this whole line. So if I blast a bunch of stuff in there, it's just gonna come out. You got two options with this. You can ditch the cable lube tool and you can blast it right down through here. I mean, it's kind of like making its own lube tool at that point. You can just wedge it in like this and just give it a hit. It's messy no matter how you do it. I find it's still less messy with the cable lube tool, so we're gonna keep going down the, stick to the plan, stick to the vision here, and I'm just gonna use a rag to cover that up. Get it started up, straight up. So as precarious as it is, you can see here, like before, the lubricant is coming and making its way back down through the cable. So we are seeing that go through. So the next one is this one over here, and we'll do the same thing. When you're doing this, you want to make sure your cables are pretty vertical, right? Because you want to use gravity to your advantage. When it comes to this, you don't have too much pressure from the aerosol can to get it down through there. So you want to make sure that you're getting gravity on your side as well. Great, so it's coming through the other end again. So that's our throttle cables done. Now all it's left to do is just to reassemble the throttle housing for the control cables and tidy everything back up. Don't worry about trying to remember which one is which. They definitely go back one way only. When you're reinstalling this housing, it's also the clamp for where your throttle sits on the bar. So make sure it's not too far back, because if it is, then this rubber will start rubbing against your guard and you won't be able to have that looseness that you want. It'll end up having a little bit of interference. Don't over tighten anything on a bike. Always tighten the way it should be tightened. If you're unsure about the torque, and if you get a torque measurement and you don't have a torque wrench, send it in. Once you're there, 2 fingers, that's it. Pull the rubber shroud back over the housing. Bring this rubber shroud over top of portions where it connects. And retighten these throttle cables. Making sure to get that lock nut at the end tightened up well. You can see the throttle play there. Beauty. Once you finish that, just have a quick look and make sure this movement here at the carburetor is good. Nice. Good action. So that's definitely one of the messier jobs that you could probably do with the KLR650. Probably not the messiest, but it's definitely up there, I'm assuming. There's probably a messier job out there, but I don't know what it is. I definitely notice a difference, actually. I feel that the controls, the throttle, and the clutch all have a little bit more ease to them. Not too much where it's going to be a bad problem, but they just feel like they're a little bit better. I feel like I got a lot of the grime out of there, and that they are a little bit more reactive. I don't know how to explain it exactly. Anyway, if you have a better way of doing this, a cleaner way to do this, by all means, let me know. And until then, I'll catch you on the next one, folks. Take care.